Oh, I wanted to take a trip down memory lane with anyone that had wanted to. I was just sitting and thinking earlier, just the 1990s. It was the last great decade, and I just loved it so much. Just wanted to go down that memory lane of just. I remember when you were a kid and you were able to run around, you actually went outside and played. We had electronics, but we actually went outside too. You know, Street lights coming on, you had to go home because it was dinner time or the sun going down. Around dinner time. And, you had your Nintendo and your Super Nintendo to play with. Then the N64 came out and 007 GoldenEye. Yeah. And whoever owned the N64, you were James Bond. But, your friends. And then you had your Orbitz drinks, your Surge, your 3D Doritos back then. Oh, you're able to go into a store with $1, get a soda and a bag of chips, and you actually had change left to put in your pocket. Oh, along with that, Pogs. Anyone remember Pogs? I actually had to buy some. They're still sitting on my shelf. Got my own little 90s shelf over there that I have for two of them. With, got the Hey Arnold Pokemon and Mighty Morphin Power Rangers. Anyone remembers coming back from school and throwing the backpack to the side to sit down and just sit in front of that TV waiting for Pokemon to come on, and then the Pokemon card craze when it came by. You'd go to your local Toys R Us and pick up all those Pokemon cards. I still have all my originals from when it happened. I think 95, 96, around there when it happened, I think. I may be wrong, but around there, yeah. Mid-90s, but... Then, you'd go to Blockbuster with your family to see what came out. It was either Thursday or Friday, the new movies. Don't forget the Be Kind Rewind before you return to the VHSs back then. When also too, the Pokemon first movie came out. And Pokemon 2000, when you went to go get your ticket, you ended up getting a special Pokemon card or promo. You would end up having either one, the Mew one. I actually have a few of those along with other promo ones, which still have those to this day also. I remember that. Still have them all in a binder, and I'll never get rid of them. Part of my childhood, and going outside and playing Skip It, and then you had to Bop It, and you just going outside and playing in dirt with your Hot Wheels, taking your bikes off dirt jumps that you made. It just, I miss it all. Plus the fashion too, the Jinko jeans back then. You could fall off something and end up landing on your feet perfectly. Those were massive parachute pants, and the gigantic big pockets you carry everything in. You can carry an old Apple computer in the back of those if you really wanted to. The gigantic pockets, but and we have good old backwards hat look that we had back then. Always had to have a backwards hat no matter what. And those starter jackets, those windbreakers, Chicago Bulls, the Hornets. Just back then, always won one of those. You had to have the Michael Jordan jersey no matter what. If you had that, you were the most popular kid in school. And those trick yo-yos back then. And I'm just unlocking so many memories in my head right now. I wish if I had a time machine, I'd go back to the 90s and stay there forever. That was just a decade that can't be repeated. I mean, I like seeing stuff coming back from the 90s, but it's just not the same as it was in that decade. 90s just had so much better feeling to it. And, Sobe drinks in glass bottles, just, I'd go back and really would. It was just so much better back then. And then, you would have your, your music? You had your Backstreet Boys, your NSYNC, your Spice Girls, your Britney Spears, all that. Christina Aguilera. You had your Limp Bizkit happening back then. One of my favorite bands still to this day. You would have, in TV. Like I said, you'd sit down there, you'd wait for your Hey Arnold or Guts or Legends of the Hidden Temples. Loved always watching that. I wanted to be on that show so much. That Nickelodeon or Ed, Ed and Eddie, that was a good one. And was it Sailor Moon? The anime back then was awesome. Just Sailor Moon and all that. It just back then was so much better times, and you'd get that gum warheads. You and your buddies would collect money. You'd get a bunch of those warheads and see who could outlast who with the sourness of those. Like cram 2 or 3 in there and see who was the toughest one of you all. And what else? The NFL Blitz on N64. That was a huge one. Everyone loved that. And one thing that I have on my bureau here that I will never get rid of is the Legend of Zelda, the Ocarina of Time. That's always near and dear to me. That's one of my favorite N64 games and always will be. I don't know why. I just love the game so much. It's just always near and dear to my heart. And music back then. TV shows back then. And we had it all. And for those who out there still remember the 90s and still nostalgia with it all the time and just you have 90s stuff, I appreciate it. You're keeping that decade alive still to this day because it was the last great decade. And I think everyone remembers, what was it, the Y2K? The world was going to end. All computers were going to. You had to buy all the food and get a bunker. Yeah, I wasn't worried about it. I was ready for 99 into 2000. But, I remember that. Also, South Park coming out. There was a lot of bad things that happened in the 90s, but you know what? There a lot of good that outweighed that bad that we had to deal with back then. But, I'd go back to that decade in a heartbeat. The ice cream truck actually went down your road. You'd grab your money and run right after it. You wanted that ice cream. Run right after and wave down the ice cream truck. Hey, stop! I want an ice cream. But, wish we could bring back those days again, because it just felt so much better than what we have in today's world. Back then was just so much simpler and easier in life. Or that's not saying that life is hard now, but just that decade, whichever decade you grew up with, you can always say the same thing too. 60s, 70s, 80s, 90s, even the early 2000s. You love the decade no matter what, because it is true. It's every decade has their own group of people. But for me, it was growing up in the 90s. And, the older and older I get, no matter what, I'm still going to love it, Still listen to Matchbox 20. Still try to find stuff out there that's associated with the 90s and buy it up. Have my shelves filled with the 90s so I can just have that nostalgia trip. Even all the Yu-Gi-Oh! And Pokemon cards I have, and have all the DVD sets of Pokemon, Hey Arnold, Sailor Moon, Yu-Gi-Oh! Just all the good stuff like we used to watch all the time. WB Kids, Cartoon Network, Nickelodeon was just, you just can't get over it. It's a decade that you will always love, and you'll always be near and dear to your heart. But part 2 at some point coming up. Hope so. I gotta write it down so I don't forget it. But thank you for coming down this nostalgia trip with me down memory lane. Hopefully I did open up some doors in your head about the 90s. But hope y'all have a fantastic night, and thank you for listening in. And hope you go back and look up the 90s and have yourself a great time. Later.